Hello, everyone on the Earth and not. My name is Swag Bastion, and today a new Hearthstone expansion was announced called Rise of Shadows, I think. And along with it came all of these beautiful cards that you see around me. And today I'm going to review them just like any other YouTuber. Except, actually, I'm going to have a twist. I'm not going to rate out of 5 stars. I'm going to rate positive, so it should be in your deck. Neutral, which is like in between, of course, and negative,
Whoops.
as in it should not be in your deck. So I'm kind of sick and tired of the 5-star rating system, so I'm going to switch it up a bit. So here we go. Okay, up first we have Forbidden Words, a 0-mana priest spell that reads, spend all your mana, destroy a minion with that much attack or less. Okay, so it can destroy a minion with up to 10 attack. That's pretty good. And it is like, actually, it's almost exactly like the old forbidden mechanic that was in Whispers of the Old Gods, I think. I don't remember because I wasn't really playing at that time, but it's like that. So you use this at 10 mana, you destroy a minion with 10 or less attack. 10 attack would be preferable because otherwise it's an inefficient use of your mana, of course. Right now we have Shadow Word Death and Shadow Word Pain. So this is actually super good. I'm going to go ahead and give this a positive rating. I will say that this will absolutely be played because it's just so flexible with any deck, and it can destroy 4 attack minions. That's a big one. And you don't have to just have Shadow Word Pain or Shadow Word Death or both in your deck in order to get around big threats on the board or small threats on the board even. But with this card, you can just have 2 copies in your deck and you can use them for small or large minions. Very flexible. And I absolutely think it will be played, so good card. Okay, so the second card I'm reviewing here is Spellword Jeweler. It is a neutral 3-mana, 3/4, with the battle cry, your hero can't be targeted by spells or hero powers until your next turn. So this card is really just a attack card for stuff like Burn Mage, maybe Hunter with Kill Command, things like that. And I don't think it's going to be run in every deck, so that's why I'm going to give this card a neutral rating, because it's honestly just going to be a tech card, and it's only going to be used against certain metas and only to counter certain decks. That's why I'm giving it a neutral rating. The next card I'm reviewing is Evil Miscreant, a 3-mana 1/5 rogue minion with card text that reads, combo, add 2 random lackeys to your hand. So this is the introduction of a new keyword, which introduces some new minions, kind of like spare parts is what I heard Regis say. It's kind of like spare parts, and yeah, that's kind of the only thing it can be compared to. So lackeys are a new set of minions that are generated by other minions or spells, probably. Spells could work. So it's these 5 types. But first I want to talk about the Evil Miscreant itself. 2 random lackeys, that's good. Lackeys are generally good just by looking at them here. They're generally good for the most part. They are all 1 mana and they all have a positive effect. So lackeys are good. But the Evil Miscreant itself, I would say, is not the best minion ever. So a 3-mana 1/5, it has enough stat points for its mana cost, but the thing is it's combo, which means you have to play a card before it in order to get the lackeys. So with that, it's already difficult to get the lackeys, and you're playing kind of a weak minion, right? This minion, it will be good against stuff like aggro paladin or whatever, something to soak up a lot of 1/1s or things with 1 health. But besides that, I would say it's not a very good minion. And combo, which means there's a level of unreliability involved, means it's not the best card ever, of course. Do you want to play a bad minion along with something else? I mean, you could buff it up with like the recently nerfed Cold Blood, but that's a 5 mana 5/5, right? Which, I mean, is not the worst thing, but that's 2 cards that you have to run in your deck in order to get a well-statted minion and some lackeys. To me, that's just not too worth it, but I would say the card overall is good, even though I'm like crapping on it right now. I would say the card is good overall. It's just a source of these lackeys that are very good, I would say. Let's go through all the lackeys and explain what they do and say how good it is, how good all the effects are. So, Ethereal Lackey, 1 mana, 1/1 with the battle cry, discover a spell. And that is good. That is so good. That's great. You could get back your Cold Blood that you maybe spent on this Evil Miscreant. You could get back your Backstab. You could get an Eviscerate, Vanish. Like, rogue spells are very good. So, I mean, that's a good card. Ethereal Lackey is good, positive. And next up, we have Faceless Lackey. A 1 mana 1/1 with battle cry. Summon a random 2-cost minion. So you're getting 3 mana worth of minions for 1 mana. Of course, if you're not counting the investment that you had to put into Evil Miscreant, then that is a very good card. I would say that's one of the best ones, if not the best one. That's probably the best one. That's super good. Up next, we have Goblin Lackey. 1 mana 1/1 with a battle cry. Give a friendly minion +1 attack and rush. So I would say this one is on the weaker side of all the lackeys, but it's still decent, right? Like, it's not going to be good in every single situation, right? If you just want stats on the board, Goblin Lackey is not going to be good for you. It's kind of like a low roll. Obviously, if all these lackeys were just the best things ever, then lackeys would be very good. And everyone would run lackey generation cards in all their decks, right? So low rolls have to be there. But even then, it's a good reactive play. But you might not always need it. So Kobold Lackey is up next, and it is a 1 mana 1/1 with battle cry, deal 2 damage. So I think this one is much better than Goblin Lackey because it impacts right away. You don't have to spend another minion. You don't have to have a minion already on the board. You don't have to spend mana on another minion to put attack onto it. So I would say Kobold Lackey is very good. Much better than Goblin Lackey. Okay, and the last one we have here is Witchy Lackey, which, wow, what a great name. It's 1 mana 1/1 with battle cry. Transform a friendly minion into one that costs 1 more. Okay, so this is going back to like an evolve mechanic in Shaman that was fun sometimes, but sometimes it can low roll really hard, like Hyreek, the bat, right? That's an 8 mana 1/1. So the low roll opportunities here are very abundant, and I would say Witchy Lackey is probably the worst one because of its unreliability. So here's how I would rate all the lackeys. I would rate Faceless Lackey at the top, and then I would rate Kobold Lackey next, and then Ethereal Lackey, Goblin Lackey, Witchy Lackey. there they all are in the order that I think they're the best in. But do I think Evil Miscreant is a good card in Rogue? I would say yes. People will run this card in their decks, and it will see quite a bit of play, I would say. Even though it's a pretty poorly statted and kind of unreliable minion, I would say people will play this card in some deck. Like if there's a Tempo Rogue or an aggro rogue, something like that, Evil Miscreant would be a good card to put in that. Even something like combo rogue, where you have a lot of combo cards, just put Evil Miscreant down, and then you get 1 mana lackeys, right? And then you can play those as combo pieces. So I would say it is a good card, a positive card, and it will see play. On to the next. The next card here is Hagatha's Scheme, a 5-mana shaman spell that reads, deal 1 damage to all minions, and it upgrades each turn. So I'm not sure how much it can upgrade. Honestly, from what I saw in the reveal trailer, it looks like it can upgrade like to infinity potentially. Of course, there aren't enough turns in Hearthstone to get up to infinity, but you know what I'm saying. It's 5 mana, deal however many damage to all minions. So it's potentially a very good board clear. What they showed in the reveal trailer is 3 damage to all minions, which I would say is not good for 5 mana, right? So at 4 mana, something like Hellfire deals 3 damage to all characters, but that actually kind of benefits the Warlock as well and is face damage. So this is kind of an iffy spell. I'm not really sure what to think about this. I think it's a little bit on the weak side, but obviously Shaman might need more board clears if aggro is if aggro is meta, and this card will fit that role. I'm gonna be safe on this, and I'm gonna say this is neutral. This card is Chef Nomi, a 7-mana 6/6 neutral legendary with the battle cry. If your deck is empty, summon 6/6/6 Greasefire Elementals. So this is obviously a big finish if you are playing some sort of control deck and you get to fatigue. I'm not sure if this is going to be run as a tech card, but it may. It seems like Dragon Collar Alana at first glance for me personally, because it just floods the board with lots of stats at a late point in the game, except, of course, Dragon Collar Alana was probably better than this card. And the real question I have is, if you're running this card, if you expect to get to fatigue, why would you not just run Mechathune, right, and win the game? So you'll have a board full of 6/6s, right? 7 6/6s, and is that really good play? Honestly, I don't think so. I honestly don't think that's a good play, because you're just playing a minion. It's a stage that's late into the game, and if your board is empty, then you're probably not doing something right, and you're probably about to lose. So nothing on this card has taunt, which means it can't stall. It doesn't have healing, which means it can't stall. Of course, it still can't stall. And you're just playing a bunch of 6/6s on the board. And it's better if you have an empty board, which is not really a good thing if you are in a late game situation. So I don't know, maybe you're playing Warlock and you have Twisting Nether or something, right? And you just clear the board. You clear the entire enemy board. They play like a couple minions, right? And then you slam this down. That would be all right. But of course, that requires some setup in order for it to be good. And why not just run Mechathune? Even though I know the Blood Bloom Cataclysm Mechathune combo is rotating out. I know it just seems that Mechathune is slightly more reliable because if your opponent kills it, then they die, right? Then you win the game. Also, you can magnetize stuff like Zilliax or what is the other one? Bronze Gatekeeper to Mechathune, and then they have to attack it because it has taunt. And they've probably used their silence by that point in the game. And they can't silence your Mechathune, which means you just win, right? It's very interesting. It's super interesting. I think this card may see some tech play at some point. It just seems very unlikely to me that this card will see any play. But I know people are gonna make this work eventually because people are crazy. They made Mechathune work, even though Naturalize and Cataclysm Blood Bloom is rotating out. They are probably going to make this work as well as Mechathune. Despite that being said, I don't think this is a good card to put in your deck. Unless you're playing some, I don't know, unless something like Academic Espionage Rogue is being played a lot, I just would not imagine this being in your deck. And even then, the Academic Espionage Rogue would probably have like practically a Kingsbane with their Spectral Cutlass, and you probably wouldn't be able to kill them anyway because you don't have any more weapon removal and they can just out heal like all of your damage, right? And they're probably just getting a bunch of one costs like taunts and, you know, a bunch of good cards from their deck if you have no more cards left in your deck. So I'm going to give this a bad rating. I don't think you should put this in your deck. Whoops. And I don't think it's going to see that much play. Okay, so the next card I'm reviewing here is the hype boy of the expansion, Rafam. You know, Rafam. I am Rafam, Supreme Archaeologist. I don't even know the voice, but whatever. So this is the main villain of the expansion, and his card actually has a pretty cool effect. It's a 7-mana, 7/8 Warlock legendary minion with taunt and the battle cry. Replace your hand and deck with legendary minions. So people have said this is the Golden Monkey battle cry. I didn't play during League of Explorers, and I'm a poor boy, so I can't really well, actually, I'm not a poor boy anymore, but back then I didn't buy cards for this game, and I was just a free-to-play player. So even if I did play during League of Explorers, I couldn't buy cards. But let's just break down this card. So 7 mana, 7/8 with taunt. That's pretty good. That's a Grave Horror, but with no discount. Almost an Ironbark Protector. And the battle cry is very interesting because it's good if you have a lot of cards in your hand, right? Your deck, I don't honestly do not think that is very good, having your deck be replaced with legendary minions, because it's just so unreliable. All the draws are just so unreliable, and you don't know what you're going to get, right? Like, you could get Hyreek the Bat Probably one of the worst legendaries in the game besides like Harbinger, Celestia, Dr. Morgan, or something. Actually, Dr. Morgan wouldn't be bad in this situation, but I would say probably Hyreek. Hyreek is probably the worst legendary minion in this situation, and that's just, wow, that's just a massive low roll. And I don't know, I feel like you need a lot of support for this card when it's played. If you have a lot of cards in your hand, that's good, but it's so unreliable what you're gonna get, right? It just needs a lot of support. I mean, it could be a good control late game card, kind of, not really, because in the late game, I just feel like legendaries aren't really going to impact the game as much by that point. And also later in the game, of course, you're not going to have that many cards in your deck. You have a little bit less than 1/3 of your entire deck in your hand, and then you play this. It's like you probably don't have that many cards in your deck. And there are very few card draw options for legendaries. That's also another thing, right? Because card draw is not guaranteed, which means you can't reliably get your legendaries from your deck. And the legendaries might just high roll or low roll and be all over the place. And they might all be super expensive, which means you can only play 1 per turn or 2 per turn, something like that. And it just doesn't seem very reliable to me. So honestly, Archvillain Rafam, even though it's a 7-mana 7/8 with Taunt, that's good. Taunt is always good. It impacts the board right away. And Battlecry is great because you can reliably get off the effect. But I've been watching Toast's stream, and despite what people think, I don't think this is a good card. It's just so unreliable and random. I mean, meme Tajas are going to have a field day with this card, but besides that, I don't think it's a good card. But Toast, I know, back to my point before, Toast has said that it may work in a aggro, like a Zoo Warlock, where you fill up your hand with your hero power a lot, but even then it's like, if you haven't won the game by turn 7 as a Zoo Warlock and you're playing a Taunt, you're playing a slow play like a 7-mana 7/8 minion, I don't think that is the right Zoo deck to play, and I don't think it's going to work, right? So yeah, that's what I think about Archvillain Rafam. I mean, it looks cool. Like, it looks cool. It sounds cool. But I honestly don't think it's going to be good. So I don't think you should put it in your deck. That is a negative for me. Whoops. So the second to last card here is an 8-mana druid spell called the Forest Aid with Twin Spell, a new keyword, and card text that reads, summon 5 2/2 treants. So 8 mana, 10 worth of stats. Wow, such a good deal. I'm just going to say this right off the bat. I don't think this card is good. I really don't. Treant decks really have just not worked. Full on Treant decks. Token decks have worked in Druid, but I think 8 mana is just not going to contribute to the game plan of Token Druid, because you want to get a bunch of stuff out on the board and you want to impact it right away. The only way that this could work is with Power of the Wild, the 2-mana Druid spell that allows you to either summon a 3/2 Panther or give your minions +1/+1. But even then, it's still just not a good play, I would say, because right now there's a reliable way to get a bunch of minions on the board without your opponent just completely clearing it, right? If you have a board full of 3/3 treants, which is what you would have here with playing the spell and then Power of the Wild to give all your minions +1/+1, your opponent could just Hellfire or Flame Strike or Mage. I mean, Mage has so many board clears. Mage could do like anything. They could sneeze, and then all these could go away. So stuff like obviously Quality Wild Pyro. Like there are so many board clears out there. This is just such a huge mana investment. At this point in the game, if you're playing Token Druid or Treant Druid, this is just such a slow play, right? It's one of the slowest plays you could ever play, right? Because it's 8 mana, which means you're practically doing nothing else that turn. And you're just leaving it up to your opponent to decide if you're going to win or lose the game, right? By this point, you should want to put something very sticky on the board like Whispering Woods, Soul of the Forest, right? Is such a good combo that reliably puts minions on the board and makes your opponent waste their board clears, right? This could be a pretty good reload card, but I honestly think it's just not what Treant Druid or Token Druid wants to do. If you're playing Treant or Token Druid, by turn 8, you want to have impacted the board so much. You want to have made your opponent waste so many of their board clears, right? Or by this turn, or at this turn, you should have had them waste pretty much all of their board clears. So in the end, I just think it's too expensive for what it's trying to do, even though with Twin Spell, you basically have 2 copies of the card in your deck with 1 copy of the card, right? So that's decent, but I just don't think it is fast enough for what Token or Treant Druid is trying to do. So I'm going to rate this card as neutral just to be safe, because I just see a glimmer of hope. I just see a glimmer that this card will be played. The very last card I am reviewing today is a 10 mana 4/12 Mage Legendary Minion with card text that reads, your first spell each turn costs 0 with the battle cry Discover a Spell. And this card is honestly so crazy. I'm just going to say the name once because I haven't been saying the names right away. So Caligos is how you pronounce it. And it's a dragon, which means it has dragon synergies. Of course, if you ever want to have dragon synergies with Mage. But this card is actually crazy. I'm just going to go ahead right now and say, yes, I think this card will see play. Because the effect is just so strong. It's like Duskfallen Aviana, if anyone remembers that card, where Duskfallen Aviana said, the first card each player plays in a turn costs 0. So your enemy got it first, but with this card, you are the only one that gets it. And you play it, and if you haven't played any spells that turn, you can actually play a spell. And you can discover a spell and then play it. So they showed something super crazy in the reveal. They showed the person playing this card, discovering a Flame Strike. They were playing against an aggro paladin with no divine shields on their minions, unfortunately. And then they play the Flame Strike for 0 mana, leaving the enemy board completely empty with a 4/12 dragon on their side with an upside. So with this first spell, each turn costs 0. So next turn, you're basically getting like double value if this survives for a turn, and your opponent is most likely just dead, right? If this survives, you've pretty much won the game. This is a very high power level card, and it'll definitely see play. Will absolutely see play, and it might be just ubiquitous. So, pretty scary. That was all for this card review, and I will see all of you guys in the next one, because I hopefully will make another one of these. And thank you for watching, of course. Hit that bell if you like me a lot, and have a day, Lynn.